Hello, beautiful world. Having lived in a city of some size my entire life, I've always felt a little detached from the food that I eat. That plus just natural curiosity has made me want to start gardening for the longest time. So last year I finally dug into it, got my hands dirty, and grew some plants. I had some nice fun adventures along the way, which I'd like to share with you now. But first, I'd like to point out that my garden curiosity was sparked by this great person right here, who by showing me his backyard garden and letting me help him at times, I learned so much and it made it seem possible for me to do too. Also, a big thanks to this beautiful man right here, who answered many of my questions early on and taught me about the lasagna method. Yep, the lasagna method. I'll get to that in a second. First is building a box for a raised bed garden. Starting with a single 20-foot long plank of wood, which was 2 by 10 inches, I cut it into 2 6-foot and 2 4-foot sections and nailed those together into a box shape with my little helper there. I laid that down in the spot I wanted and then got to work digging. I dig down about a foot in that area. I keep the dirt because I'm going to end up using that later to fill the raised bed. The reason why I chose to do this is because it's easier to control your soil, retain water, and deal with weeds in a raised bed. But you really can just do it, just fine without it. Now, for the lasagna method. The idea behind this method is to layer different ingredients and to seal them so they can anaerobically break down into easily absorbed nutrients that the plant roots can eventually reach. Starting with large branches and twigs, this formed the foundational layer of my compost. Followed by fruit peels, which were mostly from used oranges at local bakeries, and then added some shredded paper, and then some mulch. I then spread that around evenly, and then had some fun jumping on it, and then sprayed it down with some water, and finally added a layer of cardboard. By the time that cardboard breaks down, my plant roots should be growing through that to find a delicious meal of compost underneath. I then added that dirt that I dug up back into the raised bed. And with a little watering it down, my garden was finally ready for planting. However, this next step was actually a difficult one to kick off because I had no idea what I could or should plant or when to do it. Luckily, there are a ton of resources online, and in my case, I used several helpful articles and tables from my alma mater, UF. Finally, with a list of what I wanted to plant, I may have taken this next step a little too far. The engineer in me took over and began designing an exact layout for the garden. Using the recommended spacing for each plant, I scaled down the garden and cut out the appropriate space I'd needed for each plant, as well as marking the area of my garden that was most shaded, and then began arranging the different plants in the best order that I could find. Finally, with the layout that I liked, I got to picking out the seeds and seedlings and got to planting. And just like that, I was amazed that I was actually growing stuff. And let me tell you, they grew fast. It only took me a few months for this to turn into this. I couldn't believe that a little seedling with just 3 leaves turned into this in just 3 months. The most productive plants I had were for sure my pepper plants. And not having any other use for them, I decided to blend them with a few other ingredients, turning my peppers into a sauce, which I then labeled, and then better labeled, and made enough to share with a bunch of people. It was fun, and a project I'd never thought of. Besides all the tasty food, I also got to witness a whole ecosystem grow around my tiny garden. I saw colonies of ants gather and protect these tiny aphids, who were eaten by ladybugs. I saw the weirdest creatures that looked like freaking aliens. And then these giant caterpillars, which were probably my biggest garden pests. But despite them eating my plants, I couldn't but help learn more and love them. Like, how did all these guys know where my garden was? How did they find the one plant they need to thrive? That's like me using only my nose to sniff out an Arby's cookie 10 miles away. Seriously though, those cookies are amazing. Also, the way they move, bobbing back and forth like a leaf in the wind. I actually kept a few and saw them go from a cocoon to a fully grown moth. But the best animal encounter was definitely my run-in with a snake. Alright. Was here checking out my garden and found a garden snake in the garden. A little black racer. And I feel like this is kind of it's a merit badge for the garden. This has to mean something good. I'm doing something right with that garden if I got garden snakes coming around. And I want to catch it. We're at a standstill. We're at a Mexican standoff. It's all curled up, ready to be on the offensive. And I'm over here trying to catch this little guy. Now these don't really hurt. They're not poisonous or venomous. They are very fast and they do strike with a little bit of force. Been bitten by bigger ones than this and it's not too bad. But obviously you want to avoid that if I can. Oh, it's gonna be back on the run. Oh. What's up, little guy? Almost had it by the neck. Putting the phone down so I can grab it by the head. And there we are. I've got this little guy. What's up, little buddy? Bit me a few times. I don't think he was even able to break the skin. Awesome. G'day, mate. Ain't she a beaut?
What an encounter. And it was thanks to my little garden. So, if you're like me, living in a big city, wanting to feel closer to what you eat, I really recommend growing a bit of your own food. I bet you'll be surprised like I was and still am at how some plants grow. At the taste of fresh greens right off the stem. At the sheer size of some of these plants. And no doubt, their beauty. Thanks for watching.